Greetings, folks. I wanted to just start out with a thank you because people have been helping me catch up. You're watching and seeing how ignorant how ignorant I am, and helping me, and I'm getting good feedback and catching up a little more on, for example, what's called OpenXR, which, as you can see, has a lot of support. And really, there's Blender, our friend Blender. You'll see other friends of ours here. What's OpenXR? It's an application interface. It's what we call an API. And you can think, well, that's not that important, right? It's just an API after all. But no, that is important. Because if everyone agrees to that specification, it's well thought out, then you have a lot of people helping a certain technology, which leads, partly it's about interoperability, but it's also about not reinventing the wheel. It's like we all want to produce a heads-on, what do you call them, head-mounted displays, right? And some of these are for augmented reality, and some are for virtual reality. The latter is the more immersive, more like we're in right now. Like this is VR, except without, like all realities are virtual. I used to say in my SIG on PDX 4D, it's like you want to have all these motor skills and spatial abilities, and hey, it's what you have now. That's the model on which all of it is based. And then augmented reality is mixing, right? Like that Pokemon game where the little monsters appear up on your sitting right there on the bar or in the bus with you or whatever. You're adding graphical elements through goggles to the existing vista. Now that's all talking about objects and visual. There's an oral, or in other words, auditory component to all of this. And Unity, the game engine, is quite ahead in all of this. And if you recall my discussions of the game Civilization, the connection there is, can you model an entire planet in your game engine, and can you make it a hexapent? And of course you can. Of course they can, I can, we can, whatever pronouns. By the way, in my last video, the US election had just ended pretty much. There's still still ripples in the pond. But I was going to distill all the remarks that I made on Facebook and went by rather quickly. I'll put a link to a place in Medium where I took some of the comments and I basically cut and pasted them and made minor edits. I do this sometimes. I'll do the same to my blog. I'll write something in Facebook and copy it over to my blog. And the reason I'm telling you this, you might be thinking, how boring, I don't really need to know this, but hey, this is a channel about tips for teachers, and I'm saying, hey, this is something you can do too. Don't let thoughtful, interesting writing go to waste. Use Facebook for thoughtful, interesting writing. Don't make it just point and click kind of thing. Don't just pass memes around. It's not really a card game, or doesn't have to be. Write some good stuff for your friends. And then, if you like it enough, or you just want to keep it somewhere, put it in Medium, right? And mine is called Postmortem 2020, in case you want to take a look. Another thing I've been catching up on, this will not be news to everyone, but that's what the newest Raspberry Pi looks like. It's actually inside the keyboard. It's actually inside the keyboard, and the peripherals, as you can see, get stuck through the holes there. So this thing costs about $100. You do get an HDMI cable. Of course, you don't get a display. That's something you need to provide. And you can still buy just the Raspberry Pi, right? Now, to wind up what this channel is about, what you're wondering is, why am I dwelling on things like the world of 3D, right? The Unity game engine, and all this stuff about OpenXR, and what is that all about? Well, this channel is very geometric in focus. We pick up on a still not very studied geometry that's in the American literature department, really. It's in the humanities, which is why it takes a while to get to it, get around to it, because people trained in the humanities shy away from, geometric thinking, even if it's in prose, at least they used to. The whole point is to sort of change that, right? Let's bring back all kinds of old knowledge and wisdom in the humanities and not require that you become a master of like calculus, right? But you still can be, and you still may be, right? It's not either or. That's the pitfall to get into either or. It's just we can get into closest packed spheres and polyhedrons in the humanities really deeply, and then when we come over across the bridge, the CP Snow Chasm Bridge into STEMite country, we have some fluency already, and we've also probably had some background in a computer language. So this is a futuristic channel, even though here we're looking back, and Defunct Land does not refer to Epcot as it's operational right now. It refers to Epcot as Walt Disney dreamed it, and it was a huge dream and not ready to come true, just ready to be talked about. It's a conversation piece, an important one, I would say. And in our channel here, in this channel, we're interested in science fiction, futurism. I grew up reading Futurist magazine from a young age. When the Club of Rome came out with Limits to Growth, that's when I was in 8th grade, and I was pretty well focused on that for a student project or two. So I'm just playing in the arena or sandbox that I'm used to and have been in for many decades, but it happens to coincide with the interests of a lot of others. So welcome aboard if you're new, and please just sample any 10 or so of my past videos, because they're not that time bound. In other words, this is not one of those channels where it's like if some current events have gone by, it's no longer that relevant unless you're an historian. I try to unhitch from history, although I do want to end with a little bit of history. Remember, if you're just joining me, you may not know that our family lived around the world quite a bit. I lived in Rome in my early elementary school days and middle school, because my dad was working for the government of Libya and commuting, not every day or anything. And this is from those days. What I'm holding up here is some kind of master plan book I just have as a memory of those days. And also, I was going down a list of interesting books that I recommend, because we're doing American history here, right? And we're talking a lot about, like, sort of who's in charge. Like Robert Moses type planning is very top down. You remember how there was resistance bottom up. And this kind of dynamic of who's in charge, I think that's pretty important. Actually, I have so much to say on this, I don't think it's worth saying any more in this video. But a couple more souvenirs just happen to have on my desk. This is from OSCON. I was just talking about that recently, the open source conference here in Portland, put on by O'Reilly. This one says O'Reilly School of Technology. That was the year that we actually had a booth inside the conference. And yeah, it was the same company. O'Reilly was testing the waters of doing a code school. It's going to be difficult to do, because we're in a tumultuous time, so nothing was easy, I can tell you. Here's another badge. This is from more recent work. Before the pandemic, I was driving around, and after school, I'd be the one to show up, maybe with a co-teacher, and middle school students would stay late and hang out with us, and we would teach Python and Scratch, and I did some web stuff, like, HTML, CSS. I was co-teaching, and the guy I was teaching with had just come from Yelp and knew his stuff really, really well. And then I was it was good to have a contrast sometimes because the students, it's all new to them. So to have somebody, I was kind of like set myself up as his pupil and they could watch me learn from him. And I'm a big fan of more than one teacher in the room, right? That would change civilization, it seems, given how rarely it's done. But I could go on and on about what I consider to be the possible advantages, especially if we train for it. And if you've got, a worry about, well, there's not enough teaching jobs, but that's not the worry usually. It's usually we spend too much on education. And so the whole thing boils down pretty quickly to discussions about money. But really, I'm interested in discussions about what's it like to have two teachers in the classroom. We'll talk about money some other time when I'm not on the clock. All right. Talk to you soon, man. Talk to you soon.